practically every one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden symbols and messages, as well as all the lyrics of all the top rock songs. And they all sing the same refrain. It's fun.
This is a special request. We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensimedia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it ganja.
Welcome to another episode, the 34th
episode
of the Adam Dunn Show. I'm your host, Adam Dunn.
I'm your co-host, Mitch Shenassa.
Bam. And we are going to continue with last week's discussion a little bit later on in the show, and it was too much information. We were, again, cut off right at the...
Yeah, it's crazy how you can talk for 2 hours on such a precise subject, like really not even like all about a subject, just one really subtle nuance of a subject, and still run out of time.
Yeah, because what we didn't get onto, which we both were kind of waiting for, was the getting to the physical side of this whole thing. Because first we had the, obviously it's about the processing of all these extracts and the dangers now we're hearing, but of course we're not, we're the kind of naysayers normally. We would say no way, this is impossible, but we're just trying to be good information out there for the people, because we're in this infantile stages of this, and so as we're smoking these waxes off of hot nails, what really happens? You know what I mean? That's what we're going to try to find out today.
And I think, the reason it's important to know is, on the one hand, yeah, you have consumer safety, and our listeners should know and should make safe decisions. But then on the other hand, we really do want to be ahead of the curve when it comes to government regulation, any oversight that's going to happen. We want to make sure that we do stuff before they tell us we have to do stuff, because at some point, instead of saying, hey, this is what you have to do, they're just going to say, no, you're not allowed to do it anymore.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that obviously it isn't done prematurely for any reasons, that and done without actually looking into this seriously.
And the other piece of it is we don't really know in the long term where because there are arguments. I think the first times I started hearing about BHO, it was specifically that it was healthier. And now we're hearing an argument to the contrary. So later in the show, we're going to do a debate, a proper debate with Jeremy Norrie, who was on our first All About Dabs show. And Jeremy, obviously an early character in Adam's and I's experiences with oil.
Yep.
And he was with Treating Yourself magazine at the time, which was a medical magazine straight up.
Yeah, and there is obviously the harm reduction side of it all, with the amounts that you need to take and the amounts
exactly.
You need.
So we're gonna have Jeremy and Jim Freire sort of moderated debate, not like the lab debate the other week.
No, we will not let it get into the.
No, this will be a moderated debate between friends, sort of on two sides of the issue, because as much as I personally am pretty convinced by the science and the research I've read, and it has modified my smoking habits, and we'll get into that a little more after the news jump. But I still, we got to hear from it's all our family, and we got to represent all sides of the story, and that's what we're about.
For sure. And first question: how did it affect your smoking habits? Let's just.
Well,
I know yours have.
Mine definitely have. We're going to get into it after the jump, because we're about to do the news and all that.
News.
There's some good news this week too. We can use extra time on the news. I even budgeted us with more time than usual on the news. But right off the top, dude, FDA. I know it's happened before, but the FDA is going to reevaluate cannabis. It's a weird thing. I'm going to say this as a side note before I even get into the news. If you want to search for the news for the show, and you go into Google News and you type in cannabis, you get like a few articles in Denver, and then you find like really just articles from England. Then you type in marijuana and you get thousands of articles. Like that is something that we need to maybe start shifting the discussion on.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, because I mean we're all aware of the fact that it's a made up word and it's it's a very racist made up word on top of everything. So maybe we want to get away from that side. Get a little more scientific. That's the other thing too is I think if they can't come up with a way to reclassify this as a medically accepted thing at this stage, and then it's a complete fallacy. You know what I mean? Because it's like, come on, we have too much information.
Exactly. So let's shout out Way to Grow real quick. 6 locations. All over the state, still rocking the EPAP sale, I believe.
Yep, they're still doing $400.
$400 for an EPAP beyond
normally $659 or something like that.
And that's on the hookup homie price. Doesn't even scratch 400 bones.
Exactly. So they're at 6 locations, like we said, 3 here in Denver, Boulder, Fort Collins, and
Colorado Springs. Yeah, and www.waytogrow.net. You can check them out online. They ship nationwide. If you're listening to the show and you need some discreet delivery of stuff you can't get in your area because you're feeding Miracle Grow, don't feed your plants Miracle Grow. Go to waytogrow.net and order some stuff online.
Yeah, get some proper gear.
All right, so let's dive back into the news here. So the feds could actually soften their stance a little when it comes to weed is the first line of the article, which is, it's Huffington Post, I know that, but they never start that way. And like I said, there have been 3 times before that it's been before the FDA for review, and every time they said nope. So there's 8 factors that the FDA is going to consider, and let's just go through them, shall we, Adam? I haven't even looked at these yet, so this is unrehearsed. It's actual or relative potential for abuse. If you're using the word relative, it relatively has less potential for abuse than OxyContin, I think we can safely say. Yeah?
For sure.
Right? So, and actual...
And it depends what they consider abuse. I mean, to them, anybody smoking, that's abuse. That's already it's instant abuse. So.
Is it habit forming? Is it addictive? No. Is it habit forming? Yeah, yes. Just like doing anything awesome is habit forming.
Exactly.
So... it depends what they're going to see there. So 2, scientific evidence of its pharmacological effect if known. Yes.
Very much
done. So. Check. If you listeners don't know it, go online. You can Google Dr. Raphael Mechoulam in Israel. He was the first one to do it, and that was in the 70s, and then it's been going nonstop since then, right?
Yeah, so there is countless amounts of information there. So
we're not worried about that. 3, the state of current scientific knowledge regarding the drug or other substance. That's pretty, what does that even mean?
It changes every day.
Exactly.
But I could say we know a lot about it. I'd say
learning
we know more about it than
yesterday.
Other pharmaceuticals. Yeah.
It's part of learning.
Well, humans have been learning about it and messing with it for longer than we've been learning about or messing with OxyContin again,
Oh, yeah.
Its history and current pattern of abuse. There you go. It's just as I was saying,
Of course, that could be one of these points where what we're talking about today could be thrown in there as a sort of, negative in their opinion, because they see people once they get to the point of people using torches and stuff. I'm sure they're going to say, "No, that's abuse, right?" To their average.
This is kind of weird though, because then the next thing is the scope, duration, and significance of abuse. They're all worried about the abuse patterns. Wouldn't you want to make something regulated if people abuse it? And then when I think about when they started making the opioid drugs, there was definitely serious opium abuse before.
Yeah, and that's funny that basically if you think about all the drugs that are out there right now, we would definitely fail on many of those counts right there.
That's
the
what I'm
potential
saying.
For abuse. Well, it's made out of opium basically.
Yeah. We just make it stronger.
Exactly.
And then what, if any, risk is there to public health? That's none. It's psychic or physiological dependence liability,
and that's,
I guess,
completely down to
the individual. Yeah, and you're going to become dependent on anything. As I am dependent on Guayaki Yerba Mate. Guayaki, if you guys are listening, hook it with the sponsorship. And whether the substance is an immediate precursor of a substance already controlled under this subchapter. Well, yeah, it's a precursor of BHO, which is controlled, but that's tricky. That's definitely a tricky.
Exactly. So those are all ones that, and those are all written like that too on purpose.
Yeah, they're all kind of actually it has. Well, screw them. So you have some more uplifting news for us, bud?
Oh yeah, I got all the uplifting news on this side. I saw this one yesterday myself, and I thought it was pretty good because it's reminiscent of Cheech and Chong, kind of up in smoke.
It is certainly Cheech and Chong-esque.
It's in Mexico, coincidentally enough. But basically, the drug cartel, instead of, like, I guess years ago, they had taken watermelons and they carved them out and then they filled them up with weed and then they sent them over the border. Well, these guys thought that's way too much work because you got to get these guys to carve them out and got to get the things in the first place. So what they did was, it was pretty smart. They basically created round bales that were the shape of a watermelon, and then they airbrushed them quite good, too.
That looks convincing to me. Crunchy was talking some shit about it, but I find that a convincing airbrush job.
Pretty good job. I mean, there's one thing they can do in Mexico is airbrush, right? There's definitely some airbrushing skills.
That's what I'm saying.
There,
There's a lot of folk art expanding the Mexican folk art.
But they basically got caught, suspicious truck with a shipment of watermelons. They used the X-ray imaging, and obviously
they're shit in those watermelons.
It didn't look exactly like a watermelon when they went through the other way. But they give how much? Oh yeah, here they are. Is
like 20 tons or something? Some massive amount.
They discovered. No, this is not 20 tons. This was just a. They're not really giving a number here.
Well, as much as you can fit in a truck full of watermelons.
Exactly.
Flip it back to the bad news, the weird news. Big Brother is like really all up in our shit. Oh, you guys, you're lucky you're going to L.A., not Vegas. And next time you go to Vegas.
We're not going to L.A. We're going to Santa Rosa.
Santa Rosa, pardon me, California.
Big difference. Hey, NorCal and Southern Cal are very
So, well, don't hit the Indian casinos there. Colorado's 40 casinos and hundreds of others, including in the gaming mecca of Las Vegas, are bound by the same money reporting rules that have made banks reluctant to let legal marijuana businesses open bank accounts. So basically that means casinos can now keep anyone associated with legal weed enterprises, from dispensaries to grows to anything, away from the gaming tables anywhere in the country.
So if we go to Vegas just because I have a
badge,
yeah,
they can say, no, sir.
Yes.
And they're able to find that out, so they can look and
I don't know how much. It looks like the feds are telling them they're responsible for being aware, but I don't know.
How often do they run checks on you like that, though? I mean, come on.
I think if you're dropping a lot of money, they'll be like, what does this guy do? And they'll be like, oh, sorry, sir. And you know what? If you're dropping a lot of money, I feel like they're going to find a way to make it work anyway, right? Like,
They just comp you a bigger room, that's all. They'd be like,
but
hey.
no, if you're one of the dudes who's coming around during convention time, you know what I mean? If it's champs time and you're walking around all blazed out and whooked out, they might be like, oh, excuse me, sir.
Oh, yeah. No, it does. I'm sure they have, whenever there's that conventions are in town, they'll be in high alert for it, but I doubt it.
I don't know. I definitely ripped hash walking through an unnamed casino during champs one year. Like in the evening, way after the show, just hanging around the casino.
Yeah, it's funny how sloppy you can get at those shows sometimes. Like, whatever, smoke a joint through the casino, no big deal.
They think it's a way bigger deal for some reason.
It's a big deal.
Well, so you got some other bummer news, but it's still a cool concept, right?
It's bummer news, but it's and actually when you read through it, it's like everybody there knew it was going to happen anyway. There's this village called Lazaret in Albania. It's quite famous. It's been there forever. It's been like 15 years growing about half of Albania's cannabis, and Albania is famous in Europe, like in Greece and all the surrounding areas. It's almost all Albanian. It's kind of like how Paraguay is the South American producer, you know what I mean? Okay. But half of the cannabis from Albania came out of this one village, and the whole village, I mean, it was top to bottom, every single rooftop, in the streets.
Like everybody was down. That's what the news articles kind of say. Like it was a lawless marijuana village is how
everybody. I have a friend who was actually there last year, and he shot rocket launchers, so he was like, it's proper up there, He's like,
I imagine they like run you out of town if you're not down, right? Like you got to be with it.
So basically what happened was police and armored vehicles came into this place and had a 5-day siege on the town. Luckily, nobody was killed. There was no injuries like that. It was, but they managed to burn 20 tons of cannabis and pull out 83,000 plants from this village.
I saw a picture on Reddit, and it was like a cloud settled over the village. It was super awesome.
So I mean, I would consider that the biggest leaf blower sort of vibe in the world.
Yeah, they crushed our record.
they completely crushed mine. That's for sure.
That guy Mark Kushka, Kush.ca, and I were debating whether he had a bigger, hot box or we did. But neither of us came anywhere near fucking Albania.
20 tons, no way. But basically, and of course, all the main guys got out in the middle of the night undercover. And it's just kind of like, it was one of those classics where all the weed got burned. And
no one got caught.
130 people were arrested, but you figure a whole town is going to be, that doesn't seem too bad.
Yeah.
And then... this on the way out.
They were ripped as hell from breathing in 20 tons worth of
to eradicate the town of marijuana. Let's just burn it all and get everybody real high in the process. That's logical.
But you know how these things go. This will be right back on track. I'm sure they're going to go right back to work.
I wish I had videos of that, because during that huge burning and there's like a cloud, so it's like hard to see and everyone's high. People are just definitely running willy-nilly to escape, and the cops are getting high because they have no tolerance, and they're like chasing around in total like Benny Hill music scene.
Yeah. Add Benny Hill music.
Cue Benny Hill music. So all right, so now we got some real good news. Depending on how you look at it, Alzheimer's caused by loss of cannabinoids, study shows. So that's pretty cool, because I feel like the generation that most suffered from Alzheimer's, like it didn't really show up till a generation ago, sort of. And those people really were, when they were young, not really smoking a lot of weed.
No,
and it's a new disease in humanity too. So like, where does it come from? And it makes sense a lot, the way that Alzheimer's has also been associated with aluminum and stuff like that. But basically, clumps of
was that ever really proven, or is that just sort of like how it?
Well,
that's basically the myth.
I'll say this, man: clumps of protein in the brain called beta amyloid plaques are the primary marker of Alzheimer's disease. And for long, scientists knew that the clumps interfered with memory signals in the brain, but they weren't sure how. So now, a team from Stanford traced the effects of the beta amyloid plaque to the brain's cannabinoids, and they looked at brain slices in rats, and they observed that clumps of beta amyloid were impairing the memory pathways by interfering with the activity of the cannabinoids. So maybe this supplementation might not be so bad. If you got to supplement your cannabinoids now, grab an Incredibles bar, I would say.
That's a great way to boost those cannabinoid levels.
I think, and that's one of the great things about the pills,
or 13
too.
different ways now.
14 including the pills.
14 different ways.
I saw the firecracker bar for the first time.
What is a firecracker bar? Call it 15.
Awesome. 4th of July bar.
It's
Yeah.
like
What's
white
in it?
chocolate with
Pop Rocks.
like Pop Rocks.
Oh,
with Pop Rocks.
yeah, do that with some soda. Too bad they don't make soda. You could jam the Pop Rocks and soda deal. But yeah, I mean, get your cannabinoid levels up. Go grab yourself. Yeah, I still got to work through this Fireberry bar. It's scary to eat a Fireberry when you have a kid, because you never know if you're going to sleep through something important.
Yeah, don't roll over on her.
We got the co-sleeper. We're good on that. Grab an Incredibles bar. The new Makiba bar is all natural nuts and seeds and good stuff if you're a vegan, if you don't eat junk food, if you're training for a triathlon and you want to help recover from training. Go grab an Incredibles Makiba bar at the recreational or medical dispensary near you.
Everywhere.
Okay, cool. Let's talk about last week. So, yes, it did change my smoking habits a little, our discussion.
Yeah, I noticed that. Quickly, though. You were you were sold. Bam.
I mean, I was ready to believe, because I've said since, I remember the first Denver Cup, when we were like one of the few booths rocking the dabs out, and people were like, whoa, you're just giving this stuff away. And yeah. So I had already, obviously, if we were giving it away, done enough to be like, hey, I feel like this shit is accumulating on my lungs, and I don't know how about that. So when Jim had the science for us that, yes, there are these things, there is a lipid portion of cannabis, and that's the fats and the waxes and stuff, and that when you extract cannabis with butane, it extracts this stuff in a concentration, just like it does with the cannabinoids, right?
Sure, yeah.
And that if you don't and that the waxes chemically connect to the terpenes, and that if you pull them out, you're going to lose flavor.
Yeah.
And that if you don't make that sacrifice, and possibly, and this was the scary thing, even if you do make that sacrifice, you may be inhaling enough cannabinoids or enough waxes rather, to accumulate to a condition known as exogenous lipoid pneumonia over a period of time. This wouldn't be like, oh, I took a big dab and got it, but it's the sort of thing where, this is what we didn't talk about last week, cup cough. Let's talk about cup cough, Adam. And do we have a caller on the line?
No.
Okay.
It's Jim.
Oh, Jim, we have you listening in. Excellent, man. Well, we're recapping last week. We're gonna catch up. So correct us anywhere we're wrong. It's excellent to have you on. And in about 11 minutes, we'll kind of let you tell us about your new discoveries since last week, because I know you and I have been talking offline about a lot of stuff, huh?
Yeah. There's a lot more information to present. Honestly, this isn't about fear mongering. This is just about getting the industry to up its game and to be aware of a real Achilles heel for us all.
Yeah, I think making the less we know, the more foolish we'll seem when it comes time to explain. That's kind of, I think, what it comes down
Sure,
to.
we need to be the ones.
And yeah, if we're not the ones, then we're leaving it to someone else who definitely doesn't know as much as us. And when I say us, I'm talking about the cannabis, including 710 community. And when I say someone else, I mean like the cops.
Well, yeah, we have like there's I call them the generic enemy. The naysayers, the people who are going to pick apart any point to find fault. They're out there. They have used every way, shape, and form they can to demonize cannabis products. And, for there to actually be an Achilles heel there, we need to address it and at least just be aware of it and show that we're accounting for it.
Absolutely. So we were kind of just catching up, and I'll say our talk last week, I don't know if you were just listening, but it's definitely changed my smoking habits. I was the type of dude who would dab the way I would drink liquor. You know what I mean? Like, I'll have a beer every day. I won't drink hard liquor every day, but I'll have a shot mixed drink a few times a week. And that's how I was about dabbing, and that's how I kind of weighted in my mind. But I have since last week not taken a single dab. Now, Adam, I think it looks like
you
you
a dab yesterday at the Hood Lab.
Did you? Oh, that's true. You did give me my first dab in a week.
Yeah.
There you go. So one a week.
Yeah.
That's
I
right.
was just thinking. I remember you dabbing at
Yeah,
some
well, I
point.
did have a solventless dab, and I thought that was it, but they were actually two separate dabs. And a solventless dab I don't count as the same. Adam, I feel like I've seen less dabbing in general.
I think everybody is kind of interesting. All of us, not that none of us are just completely stopped, but it definitely put. I could tell even at the lab with my hardcore people, there was definitely some slowing down a little bit. And
we were at your birthday party this weekend, and Alfie and I were having this little side conversation the entire time about how the rig came out, everyone found a torch, the usual procedure and ritual happened, and then it sat out. And then it moved to another part of the table, and it sat out, and it moved to a different table, and it sat out, and then it got put away. But for that entire time that it was there, no one took a single dab the entire time.
That's interesting. And it wasn't, I mean, like right now, it's just also, not like that was probably not even conscious. You know what I mean? That was just a matter of.
Yeah, everyone preferred the flowers.
12 bullets because we had a lot of flowers.
Well, that's kind of the other piece. It is the season for stepping outside and smoking a joint rather than like, damn it, let me grab a dab real quick.
For sure. I think, the wintertime dabbing is a lot better because it's warm. Stay warm with the torch.
You up with the torch, yeah.
Summertime.
Isn't it fun to still enjoy a joint?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's
you're huffing dabs all the time. I mean, I've been there. I've sucked extracts until I just couldn't get high on anything else, and then you go to smoke a joint of really good herb, and it just isn't there, and that's just like, that's disappointing and wrong.
Though there's that other weird thing that I know we've seen where someone will like get on oil and they're on oil, not smoking any flowers, and then you give them flowers and it like sends them for a loop because it has all those other. Jim, correct me if I'm wrong here. These are polar compounds that aren't pulled out by the butane. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's really funny that. The 710 community's really latched on to only the nonpolar compounds. And there's a whole other half of the spectrum that is polar and semipolar that are just as much part of an entourage effect as anything that's coming out from a nonpolar.
And speaking of the entourage effect, and while we're talking about the recap from last week, so I know you had reached out to kind of look into more about some feedback from the guys really involved with the thought behind the entourage effect. I didn't know if they had heard back, if you had heard back from them, and also you had mentioned that you'd heard back from someone even more credentialed than yourself in organic chemistry. Can you bring the listeners up to speed on that?
Yeah, let me call that up real quick. He's from Pennsylvania, and he has a cannabis consultation industries multi-decade PhD who's done R&D work, and
PhD in organic
chemistry. Sent me a message through our ASB page, and was really thankful for bringing the information forward to him. I have it starred and I can't find it right now.
Oh, that's fine. Go ahead.
I will be looking for it, and I'll give you his reference before the end of the show.
Yeah, excellent. And I mean, what I gathered from it was this was a PhD who was thanking you for the information, saying that it was sort of not only comprehensive, but that it made sense to him, and he was glad to hear it.
Exactly. It filled in a lot of blanks he had about solvent extraction. You know, when I went into the concept of when you create that soup of fatty acids and fatty alcohols, you create a condition where esters can form really easily, and those esters aren't what are formed by the plant. And he was very interested in that. All these fatty acid chemicals, the more branch, the more side chains they have on them, when they're heated, they break down easier and turn to worse compounds.
So I was wondering, is there any way, I imagine that outside the world of our sort of voluntary harm reduction efforts here, in the real world, there from time to time these things have to be calculated. You know, someone probably has to calculate their emissions, or they have to calculate their, how much poison comes out of a cigarette, or things of that nature. Is there any method that could be used to calculate, knowing the other variables, how much of these other compounds are being formed when you blast, and then when you take that blasted product and expose it to the heat while dabbing?
Well, I've come across some things. One of the articles that I did come across was it was in a surgical manual, and basically it was outlining the dangers of using electrocautery and breathing the results of vaporized fat.
Interesting. So that would be in surgery. They have these cool devices called electrocautery pens that some cool people get
How they take a wart off?
Yeah, I got a branding with it, like on my chest. So that's I don't know about real uses for it, but yeah, it heats up super hot. It's just like I don't know, thousands of degrees, I feel like, and the concern is that stuff does that. The fat in the body is what you would breathe in from that.
Oh, you're talking about fatty acids and fatty alcohols. They're the same class of compounds, whether they come from cannabis or whether they come from the fat cells of your body. I have a study on lipoid pneumonia, and they basically discount vegetable oils as basically easily coughed up seed oils, vegetable seed oils.
So that would be like a pressed oil.
Flex lipids, like the fatty acids and things like that. And those are not. Those are they form lipid pockets and macrophages attached to it. And basically what you have is you have a chronic condition that presents very little symptoms until it becomes a very serious condition.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. I kind of wanted to get more into what we've been talking about with lipoid pneumonia in the next bit here. But that is the sort of the weird thing that I've seen with it. It's like, it's this thing where it builds up and everything's cool. Like when it's 60% bad, you feel fine. When it's 70% bad, you feel fine. When it's 95% bad, you feel 95% bad, though. It's kind of fucking crazy like that. Is that what you're kind of seeing too, Jim?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what the literature outlines. It's exactly how the literature outlines it. Most people, they present with no symptoms until a radiological study's done of their chest. And then the damage is shown. The granulomas, the bundled macrophages that form around the lipid concentrations.
Can you define a macrophage for us?
A macrophage is an immune cell, a large immune cell.
So it attacks like foreign things in the body?
So they're there to try to eat that stuff up. So they cluster around that fat or whatever, and they're trying to digest it, eat it up, whatever. And what ends up happening is these macrophages, they form granulomas in the lung.
And what's a granuloma is like, just I assume like a cluster of stuff? Sounds
little
like
nodules of non-normal tissues.
Okay. So that sounds really scary. Does that sound scary to you, Adam?
It's pretty scary sounding.
Yeah, okay. All right, so please continue scaring the hell out of us.
And I'm not really trying to be a fearmonger here. This is a reality. This is something that was a very common illness right up until the time that they basically banned paraffin-based nose drops.
Right, I saw that's something I saw, and then paraffin-based nose drops, and then I saw that in like sort of the developing world where there's traditions of like blowing oil into the kid's nose, like in India. I feel like some Ayurvedic.
Yeah, that's where
method.
it's still like a common type illness is in cultures that use like oil baths and things like that.
Right.
There are cases of lipoid pneumonia from lip gloss.
Yeah, I saw from people having chapped nose and kind of regularly applying petroleum jelly to the outside of their nose. It would cause lipoid pneumonia.
Exactly. So that kind of gives an indication that, hey, exposure limits don't necessarily have to be in the crazy extreme range for there to be a problem. If just a regular application of lip gloss can have contributed to a pneumonia case, even one, that is kind of an eye-opening thing for me, at least.
Yeah, it's external.
Yeah, it's not that's something you're not even putting in your lungs, right? And
No,
that's
exactly.
Yeah, it's just
like-
a matter of breathing over the top of it.
so. I don't know, Adam. You haven't read these studies that Jim and I have been sharing. You must have some questions on this.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, I had real pneumonia when I was when I was like 7 or something like that. So I know, like, I've had an MRI, and they told me that I had a tiny bit of scar tissue on my lung somewhere. You know, and I said, well, I had pneumonia when I was a kid. So I mean, you can see, like, and I don't notice anything, but it was about 2 years ago, so there was not as much dabbing going on. But I was already dabbing still then, so they didn't say anything when I had that MRI, which is actually quite nice to know. But yeah, it's concerning, but at the same time, we definitely just need to get to the crux of it all.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I couldn't find in my research, and I don't know if you found in your research. I found like the occupational exposure threshold limits that you suggested, Jim, last week at the 2 milligrams per cubic meter of paraffin exposure being the occupational limit. And then I found a study that cited a limit, a sort of an international occupational exposure limit of 5 milligrams per cubic liter. And the study seemed to be suggesting that it be lowered, that was too high. But even at that 5 milligrams per cubic milliliter, 99% pure, you could do a 0.1 dab, and it has to be more than 99% pure to be under that recommended exposure level.
Exactly.
And I think what people are thinking is, well, I'll disprove that. I'll do a 0.3 right now and do it, and it'll feel fine. But I think, the thing about this condition is it's not that sort of, it's not like the proverbial collapsed lung where you're fine 1 sec and then, something broke.
Exactly. This is something that is chronic. You may actually, go your whole life and never even know that you have a problem until there turns up an infection in one of those granulomas, and then they look at your lungs with a little bit closer look, and they spot there's a characteristic kind of a how do I want to describe it? It's almost a web pattern that forms in the lungs that I've seen from the X-rays that I've been looking at. And that's kind of what the indication is to look further, is once they see this pattern of kind of scarring and inflammation. See what happens once these macrophages form kind of they're called lipidomas. They're little fatty tumor-esque type things of tissue and fat. When those things burst, they are released into like the circulatory system of the lungs, like the lymph and everything else. And that inflammation spreads throughout the lung tissue.
Now, they would only burst if something made that. Like, normally they would just be these fatty growths on the inside of the lungs, which is
normally they just be
gross
like
in
a
and of themselves.
granuloma. You'd have like these little granules that have formed in your lungs.
And then something could happen, and it bursts.
And you get into like say you get some sort of lung infection and you're coughing hard.
Or you take a big dab and you're coughing hard.
Or you take a big dab and you're coughing hard, and you're like causing a lot of like mechanical stress on the lung.
Right.
These things can then, they can break. Because it's not soft tissue. It's hard. It's become kind of fibrous and stiff.
So it's like when a boxer's eyebrow splits or something like that, as opposed to the cheek, which doesn't really cut, right?
Yeah, well, it's similar to the idea of scarification.
Okay.
You want that scar to be keloid and really tough so that it lasts. Well, that's what happens in your lungs. Is this, you form this. It's not. You can't form keloid in your lungs, but you form similar structures in that you form hard granulomas in your lungs that are surrounding the lipids.
So it's like a callus on the inside of your lungs, right?
Yeah, that's a really good way to kind of generalize what's going on. It's like little granular calluses.
So then, like, can you breathe with that part of your lung still, or the callus doesn't?
No, usually one of the only things that people present with is called dyspnea, which means shortness of breath.
So it does reduce it a bit.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be the sort of thing, and this is a concern, and we were kind of just talking about it, like cup cough is something we've all talked about. For those of you listening, cup cough, I don't know if I coined the term, but I know I just kind of pulled it out of my ass. Other people have said
we used
it
to call it the cannabis cough back in the day.
So maybe I shifted.
Because when the cannabis cup came to town, everybody got sick because of passing joints around and sharing bongs and people not cleaning up.
Maybe I have a call on that, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a 610 area code. Is it a 610 area code?
Yeah, that's correct.
Where are you from, my friend? I'm from 610 as well. Where are you located, if you don't mind me asking?
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, where in Pennsylvania? I'm from Wallingford.
Oh, cool. I'm from Southern Chester County.
Oh, dude, it's awesome to hear you listening. Well, thanks for being on.
I'm the chemist that Jim was referring to in Pennsylvania.
Oh, excellent. Wow, this is, I feel like such a
I've
rush.
been meaning to get back to you.
Well, that's a good way to do it.
So thank you for calling in. We definitely appreciate your participation.
Let's get another introduction too, so we can keep the listeners.
Yeah, let's. Why don't you do that, Adam?
Well, I don't know his name.
I don't know his name either. Why don't you introduce yourself? Yeah.
There you go.
Sure. My name is I go by Mark Esau on Facebook, like Brother Esau, the Grateful Dead song.
Cool.
I don't know if you guys know that tune. My real name is Mark Sheldon. I'm a PhD chemist with more than 18 years of industrial experience at a large chemical company, which I'm no longer with. One of my expertise is in natural products chemistry and organic synthesis, and natural products and essential oil extraction is one of my areas of expertise.
So that
sounds like our kind of guy.
Yeah, sounds like exactly the sort of person we were hoping to get booked on the show. So wow, that's awesome. Thanks for helping us out there, Mark.
I'm also good friends with a fellow that you guys know very well, Jason Pinsky.
Oh, yeah, it makes sense. Pinsky seems to know everybody who speaks truth, as he likes to say so aptly.
Exactly. We go back in Grateful Dead circles and Fish circles several years.
Nice. So why don't you, in that case, tell us what you think of what Jim's been saying? You know, it's kind of, for us, we're at this great knowledge deficit where we're kind of taking Jim at his word because sounds legit,
right.
You know. So what do you think as a guy who's technically, you know, more credentialed than he is?
Yeah, Jim is highly knowledgeable. And again, like he said, I learned a great deal by listening to his show. Certainly, there are some things that I think we ought to address now in terms of this paraffin issue and what we know about the structure of glandular trichomes that essentially are, you could use the word, melted by some of these organic solvents.
Right. Yeah, you seem to be the man to maybe tell us more about some of the reactions that might be able to happen in that, what Jim was calling a reaction vessel, what I call tane soup.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely fascinating bit of plant science on what goes on in those glandular trichomes. They're actually fascinating to look at underneath the microscope, and I've worked with several different plant varieties, not the cannabis variety, on looking at how we can maximize the expression of these structures on the leaf surface. And in particular, most aromatic herbs, like the mint family, for example, also secrete their essential oils in these glandular trichome structures. And typically in the mint industry, what's practiced to isolate the oil is steam distillation. And so I think you guys had referred a little bit to steam distillation last week for isolating terpenes. And, you know, most of these essential oils are a symphony of a variety of different molecules, some polar, some non-polar, as Jim said. And so I'd like to introduce a new concept here, which is hydrophobic. Hydrophobic means that it does not like water, so very what are called lipophilic molecules, a hydrophobic molecule.
So let me venture to put together that, Jim, you can maybe help me here. Are things that are highly non-polar hydrophobic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's an accurate description of it. Non-polar.
The thing I'd like to mention in particular about the lipids that are found in the glandular trichome. So you have to remember that these aren't just there because Mother Nature just wants to put them there. They're actually serving the purpose. And the purpose, when you look at the structure of the glandular trichome, these are basically plant cells. And plant cells, the mortar and bricks that make up plant cells are generically referred to as what's called the lipid bilayer. And the lipid bilayer typically is it's the nonpolar lipids associated with a very polar head to give a very, what's called a self-assembled structure in such that the polar regions of the molecule face both the extracellular and intracellular space. And the membrane itself is where all the lipids are, which is sort of in the middle of this wall, this so-called cell wall.
So we're going to go back to some of our helpful metaphors from last week. Adam, you nailed it with the battery. Do you want to take a stab at this?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was
This is more like what you'd think of as magnets.
Okay.
And the magnets all orient according to. Okay. Example: you got a polar moiety at the end that attaches to the resin side of the trichome, and then you have a very non-polar hydrophobic moiety at the exterior end, and that self-assembles into that globular shape due to the fact that one end is sticking and the rest are poking out, and they crowd in there until you've got a complete.
And it becomes a circle, like it becomes a.
It becomes a pellicle,
like one of those like Buckminster Fuller domes.
It's like a soap bubble. I mean, you could think of a soap bubble as being the same type of structure in that it has a very long hydrophobic tail, typically a C8, a sterile tail, with a very polar, typically a sulfonate or a sulfate head. And so these assemble into what's called a micelle. And the reason why soap works so well to clean your hands is because the micelle portion is able to dissolve the oils and residues off your hand and able to compatibilize them in essentially a waterborne solution, which is the water that you're washing your hands under. So, these structures are there for a purpose. And so, again, like the dipole interaction that Jim was describing last week, the polar components of these lipids are typically phospholipids are very, very commonly found in plant, but they could also be other types of polar functional groups. And these polar functional groups, again, are very, very small compared to the rest of the molecule, which is mostly hydrophobic. So when these are extracted into a hydrocarbon solvent like butane, which they will be soluble in, you have a little bit of polar functionality in there. And you got to remember that if you're going to do a dab and you're going to burn this stuff, you're not going to be volatilizing these big molecules. These big molecules often have degrees of unsaturation, and in particular, the polyunsaturated tails that are on some of these lipid molecules are very, very thermally sensitive. So when you heat them up, you're not going to volatilize the compound. You're basically going to start decomposing it. And so what you're not putting into your lung, you're not putting paraffin into your lungs. The exposure limit that you guys referred to of paraffin has to do with breathing solid paraffin dust. Paraffin is a very, very large hydrocarbon molecule that, again, can volatilize, but mostly will break down thermally into smaller molecules. So when you smell a candle burning, you're not really smelling the large paraffin molecules. You're smelling compounds from the thermo-oxidative decomposition of the paraffin.
So what kind of compounds would those be?
Into your lungs is not particulate paraffin, which is what the exposure limit that you guys are quoting for. What's going into your lungs are the decomposition products from these lipid molecules, which are not thermally stable. And they're too large to be volatilized wholly. So what you're getting is you're getting decomposition products into your lungs.
So what kinds of...
They typically are like aromatics.
Like
toluene, benzene are the two big ones that are noted from decomposition of paraffin.
And now toluene and benzene are two that are familiar to me because I know when you read the kind of bullshit studies about why cannabis smoke's dangerous, it has those.
Let me interject for something. There is no paraffin. You're not breathing in paraffin when you do dabs.
Right.
There's no paraffin on the leaf surface, and although they characterize the cells as being a waxy component, do not mistake, hydrocarbon, petrochemical-derived paraffins with any molecules that occur on the cannabis plant. There are no paraffins on cannabis, period.
Okay. Well, I've got a study that says differently, though.
Okay,
basically aliphatic C40 to C52 show up in the bass fibers.
Okay, is this is part of the glandular trichome structure you're referring to?
No. This is an analysis. The only lipid analysis that I've been able to find has been of the bass fiber.
Yes.
So it doesn't directly translate to bud material at all.
Yeah,
but there is a definite paraffin fraction in the bass fiber that is noted in the analysis.
I could point you to a paper that where the fatty acid contents were analyzed on various different trichomes from various different plants, and I could tell you that most of the analysis is showing your garden variety triglyceride type fatty acid. I'm not seeing any high molecular weight paraffin, any hydrocarbon that would be resembling paraffin from plant glandular trichomes.
Well, I do have your email, and I would love to forward you this study on the bass fibers. It has a really complete breakdown of the lipid fraction that they found in the bass fibers.
And if I can interject here, as from the layperson kind of looking at science, first we do want to thank you for calling in, man. That actually spins this direction in this discussion in a whole different tangent, and we will. I'd love to follow up with you or Jim, and get your info and book you on for like a longer show if that would be all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm attending my first cup this week.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
We'll
Adam will be there. Yeah, find Adam at his booth and please introduce yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, we'll definitely be there, and Ryan will be there also.
Ryan will be there too.
Can't wait. It's gonna be an eye-opening experience for someone like me.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for calling in, and hope you enjoy listening to the rest of the show, man.
Great. Thanks. We're gonna enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks a lot, guys.
Jim, you're still with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, so that I feel like is a new little spin. So all this paraffin research we've been doing is not necessarily accurate, though from what I was reading, and this is what I was getting into as a layperson, it didn't seem paraffin specific. I posted it the other day that endogenous lipoid pneumonia is caused by any lipids, not specifically paraffins.
That's really the net thing. And, the point he made about paraffin decomposing.
Yes.
That's accurate. The vaporized paraffin that has been studied has been like, one example has been people who pressure wash brand new cars that have been carduba-waxed.
Okay,
Have showed
so
up
it's
with
particle. Yeah.
basically a wax-based lipoid pneumonia from
Well,
breathing that vaporized paraffin.
So I actually have some questions from listeners regarding how that might translate to vape pens because you're not heating it up as much. We got about 10 seconds left in this segment, and we got to drop to commercial, and then we're going to do about 10 minutes or so of music from Hash Money, but then we got listener questions. Can we oh, no, I'm getting a no that we're getting a production switch. Oh, we got a call coming in. Okay, sorry. Oh, okay, we got John Pitre calling in. John, do we have you on the line?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So, welcome to the Adam Dunn Show.
Thanks, guys. Nice to be on.
And nice to have you on. Adam, do you wanna jump in and say hello here? Be polite. Stop playing with your pen.
Stop playing with my pen. Hey there, how you doing there, John?
What's up, Adam? How you been?
I'm good. I'm actually going to be moving out of Cold Creek too, just like you were up there before. And
Oh, yeah, I was there a couple of years back. I was up on the top of Wonderview.
I remember. Everybody was always blasting by my place.
So, John,
Go ahead. So,
yeah.
who do we have in the studio today?
in studio, it's me, Adam, and mostly our production, our rapidly expanding production
Huge
crew.
expansion of crew.
On the line, though, we do have Jim Freire, who's an organic chemist friend of ours out in Oregon. And Jim has brought to kind of our attention some of the potential health risks of dabbing. And right now it's all been theoretical. We have no idea what it really happens. But I remember hearing through the grapevine that years ago you had some situation where you got an actual endoscopy and they found a reclaim in clumps inside your body. And this was, God, that had to be like 2000. The first Denver Cup was right before the first Denver Cup is when I heard about that, I think. Is that, you bring it up. It was your life. Yeah,
I want to say it was March 2011.
Okay.
If that sounds about right. I think so.
Could be the second Denver Cup, sure.
It might have been the second cup. I'm not really too sure, to be honest with you.
That's how those cups go.
Yeah,
2 years later, you don't even remember which
we
way
have
you
no
were.
idea. So anyway, why don't you break us down on what went down?
All right. So I was having some health issues, and general practitioner that I was seeing was worried that I was having something going on in my stomach, possibly along the lines of having stomach cancer. So they wanted to check it out, see what was going on, and they ordered a endoscopy to be done. And while they were doing it, which is extremely painful, by the way.
Yeah, can you describe for listeners who, so they put like a long, flexible, supposedly thin, but I feel like probably not thin enough, camera down your mouth, right, into your stomach?
Yes. Yep, and the camera also has, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a little knife and cup thing.
Oh, Jesus.
So they could pinch skin and take a biopsy.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So this is not like a tiny thread-like nano camera. This is like a piece of hardware.
No. It was painful as shit. It was very painful. But on the way down, they discovered in my throat, all the way around it, the entire throat was covered in what they described as this rusty orange-colored goo, which, as we all know, is dab resin.
So I got to ask, how long had you been dabbing and how regularly had you been dabbing in your life before this time? And did you feel any effects of this goo?
I want to say that I started dabbing, Jesus, man, I was still in high school. I graduated in 2000. We were blasting our own oil on the East Coast. Definitely not as pure and as clean as we're doing today by any means. It's almost,
PVC, by the way.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
But exactly,
Yeah.
a lot of PVC tubes.
Yeah.
And it's stupid kids. But I guess I could say that dabbing on the regular, Jesus, man, at least 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years, you said?
What's that?
You said 4 to 5 years?
Yes.
Call for it. Okay. And then
and I guess like pretty much since I moved to Denver, it became like regular,
Right, it's
dabbing all
regularly
day,
available.
every day, and at that time, I'm not going to do any name drops or anything, but like at that time, I was picking up what we all considered to be some of the best product Denver had to offer at that time. As a medical patient.
And you were, would you say like what, 15 to 25 dabs a day? That's what I think. Like dabbing all day is you're taking 15 to 25 dabs a day. Is that roughly?
I don't know, man. Sometimes more. I mean, we all got the same friends.
All right, so you really mean dabbing all day. Okay, because some people say I dab all
Yeah.
day, and it's just like pick-me-ups. But yeah, okay, so you're really on it. And bigger dabs, too, not just little .1ers.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
weren't
okay,
fucking
so
around.
4 or 5 years
So
of
quite
dabbing
some
all
time.
day. You go to the doctor, they put a camera in your throat, and they find what they describe as this, reclaim, pretty much, the same stuff that's getting on this rig, all around your throat the way it's all around the rig.
Yes, exactly. It had built up to, I can't remember exactly what they had said, but it was within like a 2 millimeter or 3 millimeter thickness, like in my throat.
That's pretty thick.
Did you notice anything? Were you, like, having trouble
Yeah,
breathing?
coughing, and like it was easier for me to get sick. Couldn't do as big of a bong hit if I wanted to. Obviously, at the same time, I was acclimating to high altitude living because I'm from the Northeast coast.
But 4 or 5
Like
years still.
2, but no, not really any of the big difference. But once I got the test results back from the biopsy,
So they cut some of this reclaim out of your throat with that little scooper?
yes, along with taking a section of my stomach out as well too, to make sure that I had a tumor inside my stomach, or what they believed was a tumor, but it was just a what do they call it? Like a fatty cyst or something like that. I can't remember the actual. the actual
from
name
what
of it.
Jim just said, this is just some crazy shit. Because if you do inhale fats into your lungs, there's a possibility you could get what he described kind of sounded like fatty cysts to me on your lungs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that because some people breathe with their stomach. I'm not jumping to conclusions, but anyway, so they analyzed the reclaim from your throat, and I imagine that was a pretty the most thorough analysis at the time, at very least.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I would hope that the hospital has that kind of, has an amazing way of testing stuff in the best way. But the test results came back with finite amounts of pain, hexane, and there was another one. Shit, I can't remember the name of it. There's 3 types of gases that they found.
And these
in the claims that had been obviously not purged out properly,
right?
And is still in it because at that time, there wasn't really a lot of clear shatter floating around. It was more of the wax and the butter, that kind of stuff, which I fully believe is to be poison because all you're doing is emulsifying the gas into the wax.
Well, and I mean, there's some evidence that you can really whip out a lot of the stuff if you do it long enough over heat. But as far as the concerns about it's, and when you're talking about lipoid pneumonia and when you're talking about what the situation that was going on in your throat, we're not talking about even the gas components being toxic. We're just talking about the physical characteristics of this stuff being sticky.
Yeah. But it doesn't help if you have extra.
Oh, yeah, and if it's poisonous and sticky, then it's like something a ninja would make.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
Exactly.
Are you still
So
doing?
what the doctors, this was back in on the East Coast that I had this done.
So they must have been
And
really.
it wasn't even out here. I was at.
So wait, did they know? Did they have any idea what it was, or?
Absolutely not. I mean, Dartmouth-Hitchcock is one of the Ivy Leagues. It's a beautiful campus. The hospital is amazing. I finally explained to them what it was, and they had no idea. They looked at me like I had heads and was the world's biggest drug addict. Because they just had never heard of dabs before or any way of manufacturing a byproduct
for sure.
Cannabis. But yeah, I pretty much stopped dabbing right away. I didn't become like a snob about it. I was just personally anti-dabbing myself, and I told all my friends about it.
because safety first has always been my thing.
And what was your friend's reactions? Did a lot of them quit, or?
Yeah, well, what it is, the doctors, they said that the human body can naturally break down pot resin when it's smoked normally, but when we chemically alter it into dabs, we're actually changing it on like a molecular level, and it's not resin anymore. Well, it's still resin, but it's not smoked resin. It's not flower resin. It's so concentrated that the human body it can't break it down. It just stays there. As I'm sure you all know, you can't even use hot water to really clean it down. Right? You got to hit that shit with some strong rubbing alcohol. Otherwise, it just smears all over the glass.
For sure.
No, that we do know.
Yeah, that we do know. Well, John, we want to thank you for weighing in with that in the discussion, bro. That definitely, it's all theory till we hear about someone actually being ill with it. And, I'd love to get further into this as we continue this discussion. We're going to pay the bills right now and listen to some music, man. But thank you for calling in, and I'll definitely be in touch with you.
Yeah, hit me up anytime, guys. I'll go through my records and I'll pull up the biopsy results.
That would be awesome if we could put that on the web.
Because they had each one broken down into the parts per million of what they found in that little, section from the biopsy.
Perfect, man. All right, cool. Well, we'll talk to you then, man.
All right, great, guys. Thanks for having me, and love the show, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, man. Have a good one. All right, and big ups to Way to Grow.
Yes, if you're setting up a new project, indoor, outdoor, all around, everything, they have it all. 6 locations all over the state.
And waytogrow.net. Don't forget, look at them online. They have some cool white papers on there too, talking about the differences between different lighting, how to lay out your lighting. It's a good learning, different pest control strategies and things like that. It's a good learning resource, and then you can order it right there. And they have kind of one of the best selections in customer service I've seen in the industry.
Yep, so definitely, and they have that EPAP deal right now.
Well, yeah, right now in store, the EPAP deal, $400 gets you bulb ballast reflector of an EPAP Eon, and the double-ended EPAPs, I say the light of the future, or the light of the current, state of the art.
It's definitely what you want to upgrade to right now.
Right on, and of course, always big ups to Incredibles Edibles, the best edibles in the
universe,
galaxy, universe.
Well,
there's one universe, and there's multiple galaxies.
Yes, let's go with universe.
But what if there's an alien weed that they extract?
It's actually
and make
pretty
candy
good. Could be
out
pretty
of?
good.
It probably would taste disgusting to humans, though. So the best edible in the universe for humans.
There we go.
Right on. What is it? 12 different bars, 12 different candy bars.
13 if you count the granola bar, the
Makiba.
seeds.
Oh, no. Well, 13 if you count the firecracker bar.
So 14 with the firecracker.
Then you got the
bar
Makiba bar is like the vegan seeds and nuts granola bar, I would describe that as.
Exactly.
A bar for everybody, I would say.
Yeah, there's something for everyone with delicious flavors from the Strawberry Dream to the Monkey Bar, which
Blueberry.
is banana,
that
blueberry,
Mile High Mint bar.
Mile High Mint, Fireberry, if you like habaneros plus strawberries plus a lot of milligrams of THC. Check out the Fireberry. Always we got to give much love to Build a Soil, buildasoil.com, your resource for any sort of organic living soil growing. Anything you're planning a project.
Are they doing the soil? Are they also doing that project that Burnt was talking about for the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sponsoring.
What was it called again?
So Burnt's project, his Gorilla Healer project.
Gorilla Healer,
yeah, so they are sponsors of Gorilla Healer as well. We
See?
should get Burnt on and talk about it because he's been doing some things.
Exactly.
And yeah, big up Jeremy at Build the Soil and Nick at Boulder Wellness. I saw Nick yesterday at the lab.
So
That
good
was
seeing
awesome.
them yesterday. Yeah, it was nice to meet them for the first time.
Yeah.
Look at that.
You're a caregiver. But Boulder Wellness at 5420 Arapahoe. They said it's still going to be a while before they go rec, huh?
No, you realize we're responsible for that?
What do you mean?
He was like, oh, gee, over the past 2 months, I've had so many more patients at my medical that I don't have enough to supply a rec side.
Oh, well, there we go.
You're not putting it together, Nick. That's the Adam Dunn show right there. Right on, guys. Well, Chris, you ready to rock some music? Chris is going to check out. We're going to listen to some music from Hash Money. They have this awesome BHO skit. They sent us their album. They've been getting a lot of coverage. They just did a full interview. I want to say in Reason. I'll post that to the page.
Where are these guys from, Mitch? Are they from your
They
your
are
hometown?
from my neck of New Jersey.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
man.
East Coasters, man.
Yeah, well, Brooklyn now. They're out of Brooklyn. So they have like this EDM hip hop fusion thing going on. it's very relevant, as music people might say. I don't know, but it's cool to get the East Coast musical perspective on oil, which we don't usually get, you know.
And we're actually going to take a break this time. This is amazing. We
Yes, sir. 10-minute break, bud.
Wow. Get used to it.
It's just about. Here we go, guys.
All right. See you in a second.
Yeah, buddy. What's good?
Killing, dude. Remember that hash oil shit we were talking about?
Oh yeah, the wax stuff.
Yo, I was just on YouTube. I watched this tutorial. This kid made this shit. It's like 3 minutes.
No way.
Dude, I watched it.
No fucking way. I heard you need like a lab and like all kinds of tools and equipment and shit.
I'll show it to you right now. What's the Wi-Fi in here?
I haven't paid it.
What's the Wi-Fi?
Fuck it, dude. Let's just try it. Let's try it.
Yeah, dude, I've seen it. Dude, all you need, you have butane, right?
I got a can of butane in the porch.
Will you fetch it?
Yeah. Let me get it.
Like this shit.
Oh yeah, here.
Yeah, get that butane shit. Is there like a lot left in a can?
Yeah, it's full.
Cool. Yeah. So you just run it through the dank.
You just pour it directly. I pour this whole can of butane directly onto that eighth.
And then we'll have oil after that.
It turns into oil.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw it.
You sure there's not more steps in between that, or?
You fucking put it on, dude. It's on YouTube, so you know it's good.
All right. Here we go.
I think a little more than that, maybe.
Dude, this is a lot of butane.
Dude, it's gonna be oil though, so like you need it. It's good to do.
I guess
a lot.
we'll get more oil with more butane, right?
Sure.
So I'll use the rest of it.
Light it up, man.
You light it?
Yeah.
Face full of smoke, long grape out of cone, getting paid just to smoke. Eighth to the dome, on stage throwing bows, getting paid just to smoke. Face full of smoke, long grape out of cone, getting paid just to smoke. Eighth to the dome, on stage throwing bows, getting paid just to smoke. Getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. We getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. Getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. Getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. 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 I had a boy serve cannabinoids like Cabana boys, smoking earwax dabs, getting paranoid, and had a toy sing the blues like Danny Aykroyd, smoking kush till it cancel any background noise. No seeds, ain't no weed shit. No stems, ain't no remix. 95% THC, bitch, and it's an oil pen, motherfucker. Ain't no e-cig. That's the man. Daps and dabs, caps and tabs. You should have been sponsored for plastic bags. We go through CO2. We got an ego true, and yo, my wax was like Ewok puke. You know what we gon' do? Take a hit till my eyes tearing up like an emo group. You ain't fresh dip, yo, clean those shoes and tell that bitch shake her booty how kilos move. Cash money, motherfucker. Designated smoke break. Light that shit up. Face full of smoke. Long grape out of cone. Getting paid just to smoke. Eighth to the dome. On stage throwing bows. Getting paid just to smoke. Face full of smoke. Long grape out of cone. Getting paid just to smoke. Eighth to the dome. On stage throwing bows. Getting paid just to smoke. Getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. We getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. Getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. Getting paid just to smoke. Royal oil. 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 Cash money. BHO. BHO. We be at the show like BHO. 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 Kush is my cologne, baby.
Welcome back.
We're back with the Adam Dunn Show, talking all about dabs, part 3. We have Jim Freire on the line. Hopefully we didn't lose him during that little Hash Money musical break. Shouts to the boys at Hash Money, hashmoneymusic.net. Type it out. Check out the album there. That's kind of just some of their joints. But Smokers Cough Records also, thank you for hooking it up with the promo. If you got music that you want promoted on the show, send it to us, info@adamdunnshow.com. We'll check it out, and if it's what we're listening to that week, we'll throw it on the air. So we want to do some listener questions for Jim, and if not, like I said, we have some already submitted questions. So guys, feel free to call in. Ryan, hop in and throw out the studio line for everyone. Tell everyone
we
what
have
it is.
if you guys want to give a call in, the studio number here is going to be 720-381-1420. Again, it's 720-381-1420 here at the studio to get a hold of us.
Right on. So hopefully we'll get some good questions. In the meantime, Jim, do we have you on the line?
You do have me.
Okay, so I am curious about... So we just learned that if you take that really long chain hydrocarbon that's in your dab, and then you dab it onto a hot nail, a hot plate, whatever, you're going to break that down, and you're going to make it other stuff. Volatile aromatic compounds is the term, I believe.
Yep.
And from what I know, that's the shit in graffiti markers that makes that ink dangerous. That's all I know. It eats through the paint and shit like that. So that seems like a bad thing. But now I'm curious, when you're in a vape pen, which is definitely a lower temperature, and it's mixed with glycerin, so isn't that a lipid too?
Glycerin's more of a sugar.
Okay. So that doesn't sound so bad. So it sounds like it's safe to vape pen?
Well, honestly, the PG and the
so
propylene glycol.
Propylene glycol. Okay, so tell us about that.
We all know that.
I honestly, I don't think that there's been enough investigation to say, hey, this stuff's fine. I don't know. I think that probably that form of vaporization is probably better, than smoking a cigarette and using as an e-cigarette for nicotine.
Right. But for a patient looking for, cannabinoids for medical condition,
it's not a good solvent for cannabinoids. And
so it really just acts as like a suspension agent, right? Like it's just oil floating in that stuff.
And if it sits for any length of time, it's going to fall out of suspension. You're going to have,
separation.
Yeah.
Hot hits and hits that don't really have any sensation at all. But you hit a pocket of resin that's settled out in there, and it hits your element, and that's going to be a different dose than the other thing. And the other thing of it is there's people talk about like fractional vaporization. I don't know if you've heard that term.
Can you define that for us?
You vaporize at a cooler temp so that you ostensibly avoid vaporizing these problem compounds.
Right.
So almost like using one of the carb caps on one of the new dabbers now, Jim. So you can vaporize at a lower temperature and essentially turn your domeless into an oven or something along those lines.
Well, yeah, that's the general idea behind it. But if they're leaving a clean nail, it's vaporizing. Unless they're leaving
if there's not residue left on the nail, you're saying.
Unless there's a pile of crud in that nail when they're done that didn't get vaporized, then this fractional vaporization thing is kind of a bunch of crap.
That's interesting, and that's interesting when you compare it to dabbing, proper non-solvent hash, whether dry, safe, or oil, because it does leave the char, right?
Yeah.
Adam, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, definitely does.
You're my hash guy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You can get certain strains that totally burn off. I mean, but that's only in their top 1 or 2% of the plant.
Right.
But yeah, usually with any kind of water, there's a little bit of residue left over.
And so that almost seems like proof that you're obviously not getting all that in your lungs, which doesn't happen. So yeah, that makes sense that it's all vaporizing. Yeah.
So you got polar compounds in that dry or in that natural product.
Right.
I differentiate between natural and solvent, and that's just the terminology I use. In the natural product, in that those, say, water hash or your dry sift, all your polar compounds are still intact in that trichome. And some of them, they're going to, incompletely burn, leave you that little crusty in the nail at the end. But then also on the other end of it, some of these compounds are incredibly important bronchodilators and other things that are good for your body.
So that's an interesting side of it, and I wonder if you're say heating and pressing your hash or something like that maybe changes some of that, or no?
I get the same effect out of a old school press block of hash as I do out of finely divided
just separated resin heads,
dry sift or whatever.
Adam, what do you think? You agree?
It definitely burns differently. I mean, it burns hotter if it's not been pressed. I mean, whenever you press, and that's the thing about Europe is everybody there is very, it's not a finished product unless it's pressed. You know what I mean? So you get a piece of pollen hash, which is like loose, the Moroccan stuff, and then you work it. You know what I mean? You have to work it, and nobody smokes it like they don't just sprinkle it in their joint. They actually work that piece till it's dark, and then
they put it in the joint.
Smoke it. Yeah. So I mean, it does do something definitely. I think I always think of it as like activating it right before, because a little bit of heat when you do some friction in your hand, it's going to start the process.
Yeah. So can you explain what's happening there, Jim?
Well, I can give you like a historical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
All traditional, like high quality hashes are keefed out. They beat it out over a rug, and they get the dry sift, and they beat it out of the rug, and they collect it, and then they put it into ceramic vessels, and it sits in a cool, dry place for a year, and then it gets pressed. That's old school Middle Eastern hash.
And would there be any chemical change either during the sitting time or during the pressing time, or that would just be?
There's absolutely no way that, during that amount of time, and even during the pressing processes, again, you get into pushing things in close proximity that don't necessarily exist in close proximity.
That's what I'm saying. Like you're breaking trichomes.
I mean, things are getting squished in there and mushed up. Now, what
together,
about?
And really, the only thing that I can see that is a standout difference between natural hash and non-polar solvent extracted products is the polar compounds that are in the natural products.
That's
the largest significant difference that I can see in them. Otherwise, natural hash, it's got a pellicle. You're smoking the pellicle.
We have a minute and a half left in this segment, Jim. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of those compounds? Then we're going to rock into commercial here, and then we're going to finish up the show with you and our good friend Jeremy Norrie chit-chatting a little bit about kind of these subjects from differing perspectives. Him being a very strong BHO advocate, and you being more on my side with the natural product. What is in the natural product over the next minute or so?
Well, I brought up briefly a class of compounds called azulines. The example in herbal medicine is chamomile oil, is an azuline oil. It's extremely soothing to the tissue. It's used in cosmetic products and everything else for the fact that it is like very anti-inflammatory towards your tissues. So you've got this one in particular, one that I have some personal familiarity with by extracting it, is this azuline compound. There's several isomers of it, And I think they all play a little part in the polar aspect of lung preservation. And then you've got some polar terpenes and even some non-polar terpenes that I think work in concert with the polar terpenes. A good example is just in general is pinene. Pinene is a very, very potent how you want to say it, decongestant. So, the more of these type of compounds that are preserved, when you do take that hit, you're also taking in a hit of soothing compounds and decongestant compounds, and you have small amounts of soot that allow nucleation to take place. You have compounds that are demulcent that cause phlegm to form around these nucleation points.
Let's bring this up in the discussion when we have Jeremy on the line, because I kind of want to balance that out, and we're going to go ahead and just do our last sponsor drop right here, and we'll be back into it. One more time. Way to Grow. If you're buying grow gear anywhere else, waytogrow.net. Check them out in Colorado. Check out the stores. They got 3 in Denver, so it's not inconvenient. Go check them out in Boulder. I know you used to shop there years ago and you haven't been back. Go check them out. It's a whole different ballgame right now. Fort Collins, too. And
they got the EPAPs this month too. So
yeah, EPAPions.
It's time to upgrade your systems.
Enough reason to go down there. $400. Get yourself bulb ballast reflector, everything you need to go to be rocking. And the benefits of the EPAPs, it's double-ended, so it's even light. What do you have, a better par rating?
Yeah, great par rating and longer-lasting bulbs. They last 2 years. The only thing about them, they produce a little bit of heat, so you got to make sure you have good HVAC.
And they got that for you right at Way to Grow.
There you go. It's all there.
Yep.
We also want to give a shout-out to our other friends, Ever Incredibles, best edibles in the universe. I'm saying universe.
We'll call it the best human. I wonder.
Oh, for humans, that's right.
Yeah, I wonder if aliens would have cannabinoid receptors. That would be some deep shit.
Of course they do.
Really? I would feel like
I'm convinced it's from space anyway, so we know that.
All right, we'll get into that later. Incredibles edibles. They got
14 different things out
so
there.
many bars.
15
I mean,
every day there's a new bar.
We were just talking about, right, like all the different bars, and now there's so many we didn't even mention, right?
I know. Well, the new Firecracker one's coming out for
Firecracker. It's got Pop Rocks. And
it's red and blue Pop Rocks and like white chocolate.
Yeah, it sounds pretty patriotic right there.
Yep.
They got the Monkey Bar, the Boulder Bar. They have the
the Boulder
Bar.
What's in the Boulder Bar?
Boulder Bar is
Boulder
like
toffee and chocolate.
Oh yeah, there you go.
They have the Mile High, the Mile Higher, the Fireberry. They have the Peanut Butter Buddha. I love that.
Ryan's
Peanut Butter Buddha. There you go. Yeah.
I think you've lost your title, Chris.
Nice.
Used to be
right on. Well, cool. So now we can segue back, Jim, and. Ryan, why don't you make sure we can get Jeremy on the line to make this
Jeremy's gonna be giving us a call in a very short period of time, actually just the next few minutes. So he'll be definitely getting in touch with us so we can get him on board and get this debate up and going.
In the meantime, though, Jim, let's go through kind of continue what you were saying. So you have the agilines, you have the soot that allows for nucleation, which is bad stuff can stick to it pretty much, so you can spit it up.
Yeah, that's basically the theory that I'm working off of. They've got all kinds of studies talking about how smoked cannabis is not a lung issue.
That's actually an interesting topic. Can you raise some of those studies specifically? Can you reference those, I should say, so we can even if you don't have them in front of you now, send me those links so I can post them on Facebook.
Yeah, I can send you the links to them. My computer is a spider web.
No worries.
I download and don't organize.
So I believe we have Jeremy Nori on the line. Jeremy, are you here, bud?
I am here.
Excellent to hear your voice, my friend. How you doing out there in California, man? You getting ready for the Cup?
We're getting ready for Chalice. We're getting ready for the High Times Cup a little bit, but I'm over here at the Hit Factory.
Nice.
And every day is Chalice, California.
I saw the T-shirt pics you've been posting. Those are dope T-shirts. We should definitely get some of them.
Yeah. Doug's been doing a lot of posting.
Yeah.
He got me yesterday.
Nice.
Real good. So,
Nice, but you've been grinding hard. It looks like in the photos, and we're really excited. Let's take a second to shout out Chalice. Where can people find out? ChaliceFestival.com.
It's ChaliceCalifornia.com.
ChaliceCalifornia.com.
And I hope you can make it. If you can't, we need to talk because we need to try and make that possible.
Yeah, we'll
and same
definitely
goes for
talk.
Adam.
I know. I'm getting headhunted already.
Yeah, we will talk. We will talk, my friend.
Okay.
We have about 27 minutes here, and we're going to try to do, since Jeremy obviously is a very good friend of the show's, Jim's obviously a very good friend of the show's, and I think you guys would definitely get along in person. We're going to do a very friendly and civil debate on the often heated topic of solvent versus solventless.
Pleasure to talk to you.
My pleasure as well.
So the format we're going to do is, Ryan, do you have the question list in front of you?
No, I do. I'm just going to have that right here. So we have a couple questions that we've made up that came in, and we were going to, I guess, just ask them, and we can decide who has the better, or whether solventless or BHO is more healthy for you. Or
we're kind of just we're gonna just hear both sides of the question, and at the end, we'll let the listeners decide for themselves, I think. So. Hit me with a question, Ryan, and I'll moderate.
One of the first questions that we have in here is, last week I remember Jim talking about having something be de-waxed, or it needs to be de-waxed before it to be safer than the non-de-waxed stuff. So what does it mean for something to be winterized or for it to be de-waxed? And can you does that work with solventless and BHO, or does that what does that mean?
And what are the implications of it if you can't do it for one or the other? So let's start with Jeremy, since you're new on the line. We'll let you get your voice heard. I will be timing your response, sir. So please, 4 minutes.
Okay. De-waxing and winterizing is new to me. I never got to do that when I was a hash producer because I didn't even know what it was. So now I've seen what the people are currently doing, and I've heard all the debate about what it is and then what it is not. And then I know the reality of what they actually do versus what they say they do. So for me, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. It seems like there's harmful things or it is a healthier way of going about doing things. But it also seems like a lot of people are kind of taking the shortcut, especially now, as it's getting more and more common, and they do more and more experimenting and, trying to test what the labs are coming up with result-wise, and then what they are experiencing with their customers. And there's a fine line between they want to keep certain terpenes in and keep it very fragrant, but then they also want to make it as healthy as possible, and sometimes the more healthy they make it, that gets removed. So, I'm all for everything getting as healthy as possible, and I think it's all a step in the right direction, but I think that there's just a lot of misconceptions going on out there about what winterizing is and what de-waxing is and what people are actually doing in that process.
So you have 2 minutes left. I don't know if you want to pass to Jim or if you would want to retort, because I don't know anything about it, and I don't know if you're curious about knowing about the de-waxing potential or necessity of hash, because I know when we discussed that, you asked me how come you don't have to do that for hash.
One of the things that I wonder is, how far it's going to go with other things that we're learning. For me, it's not really a debate whether solventless is more healthy than BHO. For me, it's all just been kind of whether smoking is more healthy than dabbing. And for me, I also personally experienced that feeling. So I never really had a drastic change from the course of dabbing. I've been around during the entire process of it being horrible to now what we're claiming is like fairly good. And I never really noticed a drastic health change for me in any of those things. Certain things obviously are better than others, but I definitely did notice a drastic health change when I stopped smoking marijuana versus I started consuming it in either vapor or dabbing. Definitely drastic health change there.
All right. Well,
yeah, we've had that. I've had another friend of mine who's a similar situation where he thought it was the dabbing that was because he has he has pretty weak lungs to begin with, I'd say, and coincidentally enough, he said the like smoking weed was actually worse. Like gave him more of a shortness of breath. That was kind of so. Who knows? Who knows?
And I hear the other way too. You know, sometimes people will go to dabbing. They'll be like, "I can't do this. I have to go back to smoking weed because they felt healthier that way."
Sure, I think it's definitely personal.
People are different, and I mean, the one thing I also noticed with just everything in general is even things that we determine as, this is the way that things are, and this is the medicine that people use to combat this illness. There's random side effects. There's anomalies, people that don't react the same way. There's all changes even in those. So
that's your time.
It's really difficult to say. So,
and Jim, let's go back over to you. Can we talk about dewaxing, the necessity of the process, whether natural hash needs to be dewaxed, and what the difference between doing it completely and incompletely is, where it sits with the terpenes, etc.
Well, just as a brief background, there are some people who in the literature refer to the terpenes as part of the lipid fraction because of their hydrocarbon nature. Now that said, my experience in winterizing, which is basically you take a nonpolar solvent like BHO, you dissolve it in a partially polar alcohol like ethanol, and what happens is the lipids precipitate out. They immediately precipitate out, and then once you cool it down to minus 40 for 24 to 48 hours, they basically all crystallize and drop out of solution. So that's basically a winterized solution, is where the waxes have been crystallized, they drop out of solution. It's not the same as a supersaturated solution. The waxes are being pushed out of solution by the alcohol. They're not. It's not just like a simple crystallization. This is a forced crystallization.
And a simple crystallization is what you were saying was an inline dewax?
No, this is a winterization. Inline dewaxing is basically the same as making rock candy. You're taking a supersaturated solution and you're dropping a certain portion of that supersaturation out of solution. Now, there's winterization techniques that involve vegetable oils that will drop waxes out at between minus 50 and minus 80. And the industry's kind of latched onto that as being like the holy grail because they can get something to drop out of a butane soup at between minus 50 and minus 80. So this dewaxing thing that they're doing inline isn't really a winterization. It's just basically a less wax. It's not dewaxed. It's less wax.
And now if you're doing a full winterization, is there any percentage remaining waxes, or chemically there can't be any?
The whatever would be left would be extremely small amounts, and only the lipids that would in fact interact with ethanol would stay behind.
And I've heard some people say that dewaxed.
It's very limited.
I've heard some people say that dewaxed is harsher to them. I'm thinking that those are cases where they didn't purge out all the ethanol.
That's exactly it. And also, when you use ethanol, by and large, people are using 95%. That's 5% of that is left as water. Mm-hmm. And unless you do due diligence and do a real thin purge on that to get the water out, what happens is that resin, when you heat it, it hydrolyzes. Yeah. The water breaks apart the molecules, and it becomes harsh tasting.
Sure.
You get that plasticky taste. A truly clean, winterized resin, when vaporized, should have a mild, hashy flavor, maybe with some cherry overtones. You shouldn't taste alcohol. You shouldn't taste nasty. You shouldn't taste burnt. It should just be a sweet resin flavor.
Right on. Well, we're going to move on to the next question that we have in our debate pool.
So
Can I just say a little bit more on that?
Rebuttal?
So,
Yeah, rebuttal.
of course.
Okay, so it's not a rebuttal. I just also want to say, like,
I'm trying to make it a debate. You guys are agreeing too much.
There's a lot of confusion right now with what he was talking about. Obviously, he's a scientist or an expert, and most of the people that are actually making the wax are not, and they say that they're doing certain things, and they have just kind of like started using terminology.
Can you be more specific?
Like kind of accepted to so winterizing is what everyone first was calling all the de-waxing and whatever you want to call it. And there was debate at that time whether winterizing was you had to have an actual solvent like ethanol, or if you could winterize just by freezing it like with dry ice, basically. And there's definitions that I even saw people use that said that winterizing is removing the waxes from the the core product or whatever you want to call it. And so some people say they are winterizing when they truly are not using.
They're
any
just
sort
like
of
throwing it
ethanol
on dry ice
or
and freezing
anything
it
like
for
that.
a little.
And they're just using dry ice. And so that terminology has kind of evolved into de-waxing. So if somebody says they are de-waxing, they are not using ethanol. They are only using dry ice or cooling it and then removing the particulate in the center. And that has evolved kind of like, so originally people were thinking they would do that for like long periods of time, and that would provide, more de-waxing. So they would leave it for a day or 2 days. But now they leave it for like an hour, and
so wait, so when people are
de-waxed,
just
so you know.
So when some people say they're de-waxing, they're just throwing the slab on a piece of dry ice for a couple hours?
No. So what they'll do is they'll blast into like a large, like almost like a bowl. The Pyrex pouring cups are really common.
Okay.
So they'll blast into these like kind of deep dishes and keep it cold, so it does not evaporate during their.
Oh, it's like
their
that
blast.
Jump
And
117
then they
tech.
Exactly. Then they put the liquid butane in.
They pour it in.
Dry ice.
Yeah.
And then, there's like hard material that collects in the center, and then they scoop that out, or they pour it through a second filter process and let it like kind of gravitate. They try to use the coffee filters the way they were intended, and they use gravity to.
But they're just using
drip
they would use coffee filters rather than like filter
exactly,
paper.
rather than trying to force blast through these coffee filters that aren't made for pressure.
Right.
So that theoretically is how they're getting their cleaner product, and that is what the current industry term is for de-waxing.
Interesting.
And,
so
there you
Jim,
go.
thank you, Jeremy. Jim, what are they doing? What is that?
Well, basically, they're taking the densest, heaviest fraction and cooling it down to the point where it won't stay in solution anymore.
Okay, so would that be the waxes?
It can be the waxes. It can be the sterols. Basically, you're going by molecular weight, so it could be any one of the fat. It could be any lipid in there, just as long as it's a big, fat, heavy molecule. Usually the bigger, fatter, heavier the molecule it is, the more susceptible it is to coming out of solution. So basically, they're just dropping the temperature until the solubility of butane will no longer hold that particular fraction, and that fraction falls out.
That's pretty cool.
The problem with that is butane is nonpolar. It is very nonpolar, and so it's going to hold on to the lighter fractions during this process. It's not going to release. It's not going to drop them out.
And
they're
would that
too
include
closely related to all the other compounds that it's holding back in the solution for them to actually fall out of solution.
So those lighter compounds, would those be? Because like both you and Mark before were saying that when the waxes broke down, they would be like these small, light, dangerous compounds. Would those be the ones that would stick around?
Well, no. He's basically talking about the decomposition products once it's heated.
Right. So what
would
the
stick lower end fatty acids, the lower end fatty alcohols, lighter molecular weights are more likely to stay in solution than heavier molecular weights.
And would that include anything that we're concerned about?
So, say as an example, say C40 wax is light enough to hang in there at -50, but C54 drops right out.
Okay.
That's kind of what you're looking at there is.
So there are some waxes that would stick around through that process.
Oh, yeah. There are some waxes that would stick around. Whereas when you're using a second solvent, the only possible lipids that can stick around are those that are absolutely soluble in ethanol, and there's so few of them. Any experiment you want to do by taking vegetable oil or some sort of fat or whatever and dropping it into Everclear, it will show you that it just doesn't mix.
Right.
So that's where you're getting the force, where the ethanol actually forces the lipids out of solution. It's because alcohol just will not dissolve certain compounds, and since it doesn't dissolve those compounds, but it does dissolve the resin compounds, it holds on to those and it pushes the other ones out of solution.
That makes sense. So I have another question, kind of regards to using coffee filters. Does it matter the difference between using coffee filters to filter, even after you've done a proper wash and winterize, versus using proper filter paper?
Well, I got started using the brown coffee filters, and they work. They're clean. They're food grade. I wouldn't really put a lot of worry into using a coffee filter. The only thing about them is they're limited in how far they'll filter. Like, for instance, you can't filter finely divided activated charcoal with a coffee filter.
Oh, really?
No, I won't hold it. Coffee filter, I think, runs around 40 micron.
Okay. So then, are there waxes that would go through? Would it be?
Oh yeah. You're talking, in the de-waxing process that Jeremy outlined. Which, by the way, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of real dissent or real debate, because I'm listening to him and we seem to be very much on the same page.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of what we were trying to prove circuitously.
Honestly, I don't come up from a place that is anti-BHO at all. I don't come from that place.
I can't see a chemist being afraid of chemistry. You know what I mean? That's
I'm
the
just
truth.
Coming from a place where I recognize that there is a portion of a fraction that is coming over that is not beneficial and needs to be addressed before somebody else addresses it for us.
I agree with that. Just so I can chime in here.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I feel like we're on the same page too. My only thing is that I just feel like people like to make a lot of statements, especially my kind of friends that know that they're authorities on all of this stuff, and I just feel like we don't really have anybody who's an authority. There's no information. Even all the science that we talk about, is it comparable? I don't know that it is. I mean, working in a candle factory versus doing a dab, it could be worse.
We lose him?
Hello? Still showing. Hello?
Hello?
Yep. Okay, 2 hours. So we have Jim. Jeremy, did we lose you?
Well, we lost Jeremy. That's bad. I like what he was saying.
Yeah. Well, let's see, Jeremy, if you still got us, call us back on. But okay, we're calling Jeremy back. Jeremy, we got your back, bud?
Yes, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries, man. So you were saying, yeah, we're not sure if it's comparable as far as working in a candle factory.
I just feel like we have no science. Basically, we have no data on what we do. So everything else, it's very interesting. Even the studies that the labs do on the actual solvents that we do. And
now, what do you have to say,
you know,
studies aside, what do you have to say as far as what the camera found in John Pitre's throat?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, so he was on earlier in the show. Sorry, I always assume people are listening, but I didn't. So he was on earlier today, and after about 4 or 5 years of heavy dabbing, he got an endoscopy for a stomach problem. You still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Cool. He got an endoscopy for a stomach problem, and they found basically that his throat was
completely coated, about 3 millimeters. Even. It was like
3 millimeters of reclaim, bud.
Serious.
Adam, can you just you fill in because you're still dabbing?
That's documentable, or that's something?
Yeah, he's going to give us his medical records to put up on the Adam Dunn Show Facebook.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's really interesting to me. I wonder why that's happening. Is it from dabbing, or is it from doing gram globs every day, or what? That I don't know.
So do you think there is a way? Do you think there is a way to dab unsafely and irresponsibly?
What's that?
Do you think there is a way to dab unsafely and irresponsibly?
Oh, absolutely. BHO? I for sure do. I think there's a way to do lots of things. You could eat, you could drink water and kill yourself.
For sure.
Dabbing gram globs, I think, is just bad. I think one of my friends, Dan, said something that really stays true to my heart. And I feel like if something offends your senses, then it's probably not good for you.
So
the reactions that I feel from doing too big of a dab are definitely the things that worry me the most about dabbing. The things that I feel when I go through a dab that was too big, or maybe something that wasn't done properly, those are the things that make me feel oh wow, that was an unpleasant experience, and that's what I'm mostly worried about.
And what percentage of dabs do you feel like that is, though? Well, and what percentage do you think it is?
I don't even know if it's the dabs. Lately, and lately I've been wondering if I need to switch to quartz.
Because you're concerned
I've
about
been
the
using
titanium.
a ceramic nail, and then I went back to using titanium, and I had a really negative experience with that. I don't know what any of this stuff is. I feel like there's so much science that we are missing that could lead us to why we are having these problems.
Yeah, that's definitely a good question, because one of the things that I was thinking of the last show was we kind of could do a whole show maybe based on just the different materials that people are smoking on, and bring somebody in who really can, because that's something that we're definitely going into uncharted territory when we're heating things at all different temperatures.
I can see something about titanium is that nanoparticle titanium dioxide is an extremely potent reactive catalyst. I don't know if you've heard of these. There was an article about buildings that eat pollution. And basically what it is they put a nano coating of titanium dioxide on the exterior of this building, and it breaks down toxic, noxious traits.
So that's a perfect example of exactly what I'm talking about. So that's really interesting. Does that have anything to do with me doing a dab off of a titanium nail? I have no idea.
I have no idea.
It'd be totally different.
Is there a scientific reason you should think there should be?
Nail, and look for oxidation. If there's oxidation on there, when you hit the nail with the torch, it's going to blow the oxide off into nanoparticles that you're going to inhale.
Okay. See, and this is all stuff that I think is really important to study. I would love to know if this is actually occurring, and then how bad is it occurring, and how harmful is
what
this
scientist
for us,
in the cannabis community would have the ability to study this? Because
I don't
agree.
know. I think that it's all going to come soon, but that this is the real new ground that we're breaking.
Well, the one thing is, I mean, we're definitely smart enough to know that we need to filter it through water. I don't think anybody dry hitting on giant dabs, and if they are, it's a bad idea. If they are, it's a bad idea.
You'd be surprised. Your friend Merck likes to do something we called the Merck Direct Inject, where he'll just cut a piece of tubing and he'll dab right out of the tubing.
Like a crackhead.
Yeah.
You know,
and that brings me, we have
crazy,
3 minutes left,
so.
and I just joked about it, but I want to hear on both sides. I have concerns in my personal experience. This is why I slowed down with dabs in the first place. It definitely affected my mood. I found I needed a dab. I don't ever really need to smoke. I want to smoke. I want to smoke really bad. It gets to a point where it's like a real bummer if I don't smoke, but not in the way that I needed a dab. And I don't think there's anything chemically addictive to it, but I do think there may be some, I don't know, like if you take a lot of any substance, your body stops producing its version. And I don't know if it's like an endocannabinoid effect. I'm not a scientist. None of us are physiologists, but speculatively, Jim, 1 minute, please, and then we'll go 1 minute to Jeremy to close it out.
Oh, I can give it to you real quick and real straightforward. Cannabis has what's known as a biphasic response. The dose at low levels is completely different. It's 180 degrees different than the dose at high levels. So what's happening is you're changing the regulatory nature of your endocannabinoid system by overdosing it with these high-potency dabs to the point that you're no longer producing your own endocannabinoids, and you've changed the tone of your endocannabinoid system to the point that when you aren't supplementing with these high-potency products, you are actually in a chemical deficiency. It is actually a chemical deficiency. And it doesn't autocorrect for a couple days until you start making your own again.
And that makes sense to me. I mean, it's like how your blood sugar works. It's how all the systems in your body work. When you give it, your opiate, all your internal opiates. If you take synthetic opiates, you stop making your internal ones, and then you go through that whole process. So, Jeremy, we have 1 minute left. What do you think, bud? Why do people need dabs?
I mean, I have the exact opposite experience.
You know people who need a fucking dab.
Yeah, but is that like something that they're mentally saying, or
I think it's just the process of all the.
They do, and I think that our isn't the reason that we can't overdose on cannabis because our body regulates that, and if it has too much of something, it just doesn't accept it. I remember going over this before. My friend Adam thought he was overdosing on THC, and I ran this by a couple of scientists, and they were like, "Yeah, that doesn't happen." And
it's not me, by the way.
Body down-regulates that because that's how we don't overdose. That's how it's impossible.
Interesting. We'll have to bring on someone who really knows their endocannabinoid system well on that one.
Also, THC and cannabinoids don't have any effect on the brainstem, so they don't have any effect on your autonomic functions like your heartbeat or your breathing.
Oh, I didn't even know that. That's
why you don't overdose on cannabinoids, is because they don't affect the brainstem.
Oh, well, new fact learned. We'll have to do the physiology of cannabis at a later show. Gentlemen, Jeremy and Jim, thank you so much for being on and representing your respective sides of perspectives, I should say, in the discussion. We got 4.5 minutes left, Adam. This one went by really fast.
Yeah, it did, actually. And like I was saying before, I don't think it's addictive by any means. I think it's just strictly, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that to do dabs, you have to have your rig and your torch and your thing, and it's kind of becomes like a ritual. And just like people sometimes, in Amsterdam, people just sit there and roll joints for hours. They roll these gigantic, ridiculous joints, and
they
it's pretty
spend
much
time constructing it.
Yeah, it's part of the ritual, So I think that's kind of maybe more the angle. But the endocannabinoid overload is a possibility, especially depending on, I think, person to person. I think some people are just bulletproof, doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Yeah. And other people, it's you can notice it one dab down and they're already looking like
whitey.
So you're like, okay, I think we have obviously different systems, and some of us are more built for it,
I mean, we've all seen someone, not we've all, but everyone in this room, I think, has seen someone drop off a dab at a cup And there are effects with the blood sugar that happen as how your body processes THC. And
it's always people who never ate anything, and
you're coming up to altitude and stuff.
Drank a couple beers.
I mean, I think the end conclusion on BHO is, if it seems to be making you unhealthy, if you've noticed a decline in your health, maybe try taking a break and see if it gets better.
Yeah, like anything. It's just like anything, though. You really just got to switch it up too sometimes, because that's also what we were talking about earlier, when people who are doing dabs all the time and then they smoke a joint and get really like nails them hard. But that's also just because of different receptors.
You got different stuff that's not in. They don't all have the same thing.
Yep. It's been a really good discussion though. Jim's definitely keeping it very scientific, which we love.
Yeah, no, it's really an interesting discussion, and we want to hear from you guys. Speaking of hearing from you guys, the ChemDog contest, full effect on the Facebook page. You see that, Adam? It's all cool looking.
Oh yeah,
now.
you showed me yesterday. It was looking good. So
guys, what you can do is you go to our Facebook page, and then there's like where it says like likes and things like that. You can click promotions, and under the promotions page, you can also just check our wall where we've posted it, and it has a link. You just like our page, obviously, that's step one, and then pop in your email address. Yeah,
and you're in.
You're in, and it's like totally the computer, the software even picks the winner, so it can't be fudged.
What? I don't get to win?
No.
I thought I was going to win this time, but nah, obviously. Okay, so a quick shout out to everybody. Shout out to my lovely wife, Cece, and baby, Nick. Nick's hitting the farm. We're going out to California, so... Gonna see the baby for 5 days. It's gonna be crazy.
Oh, Grandma's got the baby.
Grandma's got the baby. So shout out to Grandma out at the farm. Actually, she's gonna be picking him up right now, I guess. And then to Alfie and Kojak, keeping it real down there at the Whispering Falls.
Right on, Ryan. You got shout outs? I'm looking at you.
Hey, I mean, I know my family's been listening, so I think a shout out to the mom and dad and Kyle, everybody over at the Incredible offices too. You have to give Incredible.
Yeah,
a shout
I don't know
out.
that they listen.
Kyle listens.
Kyle bumps.
Kyle's
it right
a secret listener, but he listens. He knows he fucking listens.
Yeah, shouts to everyone who's been a long time listener. If you're a new listener, definitely shouts to you. Check us out, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. Follow us. Subscribe on iTunes, and then you don't have to bother catching up. It delivers the episode to you. That's the best shit. Obviously, shout out to my wonderful, amazing wife, Reese. It's our 3-year anniversary today. So I'll see you in a few hours. And apparently Farron has been talking since she's been hearing me talk on the show. Reese texted me, so
we'll have to get her and Nick in.
Yeah, we're gonna
fill in for us one time.
Father's Day episode. We'll go do
kids
something.
to work day.
Exactly.
And also, just a quick reminder: anybody who's coming out to the Cannabis Cup, keep a look for us. We'll be having a THC / precision extraction technologies. where We have some vac ovens. / Adam Dunn Show. We have / about 5 slashes.
It's gonna be
it's a slasher flick in there.
But yeah, take a look for our booth. Come on by. I'll smoke a dab with you. I don't know if Mitch isn't
even going to be.
I'll have a dab down with you too.
I'll
for
still
sure.
smoke a dab with you. No
dab
problem.
out with these guys.
Yep. And until next week, and we're going to try to lighten it up, I think, at some point.
Yeah,
so we've had
so many
serious discussion after serious discussion. So I think we're going to kind of, I'm sure at the Cup, I will find some great things to report
Absolutely.
back. And bring some information to you guys.
Have a great week, guys. Hit us up on Facebook, and let's continue the discussion.
Peace.